At 7:03 p.m. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Oakland Mills Community Association Village Board meeting. We have a couple of administrative items to kick off the agenda. And then we'll get going with resident remarks and the rest of business on the meeting. So our first item of business is to approve the minutes from the August 23rd, 2022 board meeting. Is there a motion to approve? I see a motion from Warren. Is there a second? There's a second from Bill. All in favor of approving? 1, 2, 3. Oppose? And I'm going to abstain because I was on business travel and was unable to attend the meeting, and I apologize for that. It was I was really trying, and then being an hour behind, it just wasn't going to work. We had barely left the office, and I texted Sandy and I said I could do this from my phone in the car if we need a quorum, and she's like, no. All right. All right, next up is to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion to approve? Okay, there's a motion from Lynn. Is there a second? A second from Bill. Any discussion? All right, all in favor of approving tonight's agenda? 1, 2, 3, 4, 0, 0, Amy. Okay, we are underway. So first up, as always, we have resident remarks. If you would like to make remarks to the village board, now is your chance. Just use the hand raise feature in Zoom or turn on your video and raise your hand at me. And I'll call you in the order that you raise your hand, and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Anyone for resident remarks? Going once, going twice? Moving on to old business. All right, our first item of old business is a rather unpleasant one. It is the Howard County Public School System Capital Improvement Program update. And I know I sent the board an email, but just for the benefit of the record, for our meeting minutes and our recording and our guests with us, the superintendent of the school system submitted his proposed capital budget, capital improvement program, and long-term program for school construction. So that's renovations, additions, and new construction in the school system. As you know, last year, Oakland Mills came out in really good numbers, including from a pool party. And the Board of Education heard us, and they inserted Oakland Mills High School into the capital improvement plan where it wasn't there before, with a projected start of renovations in fiscal 26. And they advanced Oakland Mills Middle a bit ahead of its original schedule with renovations and an addition to start in fiscal 24. Every year, the superintendent introduces a new proposed capital improvement, capital budget, capital improvement program, and long-term plan. When the superintendent introduced this at the Board of Education meeting last week, it keeps Oakland Mills Middle in place for fiscal 24, which is good, but it pushes Oakland Mills High School out of the capital improvement program onto the long-range plan without an anticipated start date for renovations and an addition until 2033, at which point the school will be 60 years old. And a lot of the systems at the school, therefore, will be 60 years old because the school has never undergone a comprehensive systemic renovation. It's had a couple of additions put in, science wing in the 90s, the rear wing and the bump out of the cafeteria, as well as those porticos above the entrances were, I think, 2003 to 2005 was when that construction happened. But what they didn't do with Oakland Mills when they did that is they didn't do any kind of renovation to the older parts of the building. So anything that was standing when they put additions on was just left as it was, beyond, knocking out walls to make the connections between old wings and new wings. So, with that delay, obviously, Oakland Mills High would stay as it wouldn't stay as it is. It would probably continue to deteriorate for another 11 years when, like I said, the school would be 60 years old. So, of course, a lot of people aren't happy with that. A lot of people are already emailing the Board of Education. We're doing all kinds of pushes to get people signed up to go and testify either in person or virtually on the 22nd. And I circulated to everyone over the weekend the draft testimony that I propose for OMCA. And even though we get several minutes, I was really trying to go for something, pretty brief that sort of just punches right at the heart of the issue, says what we want, and gives plenty of time for other people to speak. Lynn, thank you for sending me some feedback over the weekend. I also circulated it to members of the Education Committee, got a little bit of feedback. And one piece of that feedback was to sort of break from tradition, and instead of starting the testimony by saying who I am and who I represent, start with that quote from 4 years ago about Oakland Mills High School, that 4 years ago, it couldn't provide a conducive learning environment. So just set it up with that, introduce myself, and then basically say, think about what you could be doing here. Stick with the plan and do the right thing. So does anyone need to see it? Does anyone want me to share the screen, or did anyone have additional feedback on that?
So Jonathan, I think it was attached. It was sent out as an attachment. Is that right?
I sent it to everyone separately over the weekend, and then Amy has it in the package.
Okay. The only thing I noticed is you mentioned pushing the goalposts back. I was wondering if we should use a football analogy. I don't know. It just seems like sort of a male thing.
Yeah, well, it turns out that the outdoor football scoreboard is the only one that works, ironically. So, but that's a whole other.
I just thought maybe, I mean, I'm a football fan, but I thought it might be more appropriate to use some other analogy or some other phrase.
I'm fine with goalposts, but I mean, you could just say pushing the start date back. I mean, you could just say what it is rather than using a term, but I'm fine with goalpost.
Let me let me bring it up, because I can't even remember exactly what I said. Hang on, I'll share it with everyone. It was a very long weekend working on this stuff, and basically everything I've done outside of work has been this. I'll give some more updates on what else is going on around this in a second after we look at this testimony. All right, so where did we say that? Or I? It's we. I mean, once we.
It's at the very end, I think.
At the end, it might be the last sentence.
Goalposts, yeah.
But that could be confusing. It could sound like we actually mean the actual goalpost.
Is there something better than start date?
I can't think of one. I'm just.
I mean, I'm all for kind of speaking clearly. So I mean, is it a coincidence that the date work will be gone? The capital improvement date.
Or what about this? What about, is it a coincidence that the resolution to these problems?
It is, but I mean, what you're actually asking is that there's a start date, and the start date was one thing, and now it's a different thing.
Okay.
I think that works.
Let me just let me save that in. Let me save that where I will have any hope of finding it again after this meeting. All right, there we go. Okay, anything else?
No, I think it's a great letter, and thank you for spending so much time on this, Jonathan.
Sure. All right, so just to go into a little more, just to provide a little more information about what is happening. Obviously, there's a big push, to get people out to hopefully to get people out to testify. I mean, emails are great because everything goes on the record, and the more emails coming in, the more they see interest. But if they see a sea of orange shirts or people wearing OM gear or something sitting in the boardroom or talking to them on Zoom, I think there's greater effect. So, one of the things, if you saw your email just before the meeting, I responded to the one where Ginny said she couldn't make it tonight. And I said one of the things I was going to suggest is if anyone is available and comfortable with going to an in-person meeting, I checked with a member of the Board of Education. And, since I would be speaking and representing a group, I'm welcome to have the rest of the board of directors, of the group at the table with me. So if we want to put on our orange Oakland Mills Other Barn shirts and crowd the table, we are certainly welcome to do that, along with anyone else who wants to come to the room. And, even if they're just sitting in the audience in orange and aren't speaking, it kind of makes a statement. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know so I can find you in case it's crowded that night. But it's at the Board of Education building on Route 108. I forget the exact address, but the Board of Education building on 108. I can get you the exact address if you haven't been there before.
Jonathan, I have a question. Is this particular capital improvement schedule, is this the one that is being voted on? There were 3, correct? There were 3 schedules put forward.
They're going to vote on the whole package. So there's the budget,
Right.
and then there's the budget for fiscal 24, and then there's the capital improvement program for, what is it, 25 through 29, and then anything beyond that, which is where the superintendent wants to push Oakland Mills High School, is like the long range plan.
Okay. So I wonder if just going back to the letter, that do we want to say something about that's having us be put on the long range plan? I mean, being specific, because there will be a lot of people in the audience who won't really be familiar with this. Or do you think that's not necessary?
I don't think it's necessary because the people who we're talking to who have to vote on this know exactly what's happening, because
Right.
they have a big, I mean, I sent this to all of you, but they have a big document in front of them, and it has 3 separate charts. One chart is budget, one is capital improvement program, and one is long range plan. And we're saying keep this thing right where it was in the capital improvement program. I almost think introducing the other concepts might, it's not going to confuse the Board of Education, but introducing that, to our general public who we just want to come out and testify and who might be a little intimidated by that, might just be a little confusing. I think it's easier just to stick with the message of keep it in 2026, keep it where it was.
That's great, as long as it's all up there for everyone to see.
Yeah.
What they're talking about. That's fine. Thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, Jonathan, 2 things. The keep it in 2026, I know it's been kind of the thing, but it really needed to be done in 2006. It needed to be done a lot farther before that. So by saying keep it in 2026, it's kind of implying like, hey, you've done us a favor and you had it on 2026, but really that was the bare minimum. It needed to be done much earlier than that. So like, how could we convey that without making it more complicated, right? Like 2026 was even barely okay. So saying keep it in 2026 is like, all right, give us those scraps that you were giving us.
So something's wrong with someone's sound. It sounds like a record scratching, but anyway, you are correct. I mean, it should have been done a long time ago. So at the very beginning, I do say that it's been deferred since 2009. And then later on, I say, if you had done this on time, the building would have been 36 years old. If you do it according to the plan you did last year, it'll be 53 years old. If you wait until what the superintendent proposes, it'll be 60 years old. So I'm trying to say without saying, like, you should really be starting this tomorrow. If you really if you really could, you should be starting this tomorrow because it's 13 years overdue already.
Right.
But I mean, at this point, I really don't think there's any chance in getting it moved earlier than 2026. So I think telling the board to stick with what they did last year is an easy decision for them because all they have to do is do the same thing they did last year.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I'm kind of thinking what Lynn was just bringing up is the long term, short term. Like maybe instead of saying get it on the budget for 2026, maybe say put it in the short term budget or the midterm or whatever, you know, like I don't know. Just
There's no in between. There's no in between when it comes to 24 versus 25 to 29. Because they can only ask for funding for the upcoming year.
mhm.
So, so as we go into the budget season, the other thing we're going to have to do with the council and the executive and the state is make sure that they produce the funding that the school system is asking for to get Oakland Mills Middle started on time. Because Oakland Mills Middle is supposed to have a 24 start, which means the money needs to start flowing next fiscal year. For anything not on the 24 list, we're not even talking about getting the money flowing yet. The ask just has to be there for when that fiscal year arrives. So if they kick this thing out of the CIP and put it on the long range, it means it's going to be what is this 2020? It's going to be 10 years before they're even asking for the money for that school.
What's CIP? What did you just?
Capital improvement plan.
Oh, okay. The other thing is, did something happen that would have made the superintendent switch? Like, did another school have a big discovery of something wrong, or was this just lobbying and priorities?
I mean, I don't to this day know exactly what made him decide that Oakland Mills could be down so low. I've been talking to a member of the Board of Education, and some of the, theoretically data-driven rationalizations they're getting from the school system staff. Let's put it this way. This is my take, and this is the members' take. They can cut the data any way they want to make it look like one school is in more need than another. So one of the things I heard was they looked at Centennial. They looked at a neighboring school like Mount Hebron, and they said, oh, we need to expand Centennial first to help relieve Mount Hebron. Now, nothing says you have to redistrict from Mount Hebron to Centennial, right? They redistrict all over the place. We learned that from a couple of years ago. But they actually looked at them as a group. Now, they don't include Oakland Mills in the same grouping as like Howard and Longreach, which are overcrowded and share borders with Oakland Mills. They have Oakland Mills in its own planning area, even though they've districted students from Longreach into Oakland Mills, a couple of years ago, and they districted students out of Oakland Mills into Atholton at the same time. So basically, you can draw different circles around these schools, and you can capture other schools that are crowded and say, oh, now we need to send the money to that part of the county. They're more crowded. But if you look at the schools in isolation, Oakland Mills is actually the one that would be at 108% capacity by 2030 if they don't do anything. So if they wait till 2033 when this starts, either they're going to have to move kids out of Oakland Mills High School, but I don't know where, since the schools around us are crowded, or they're going to have to bring trailers and set them up, wherever they can find land at Oakland Mills High School to accommodate the kids, because it's at capacity right now.
The bottom line, though, is, I think it's actually sort of a legal matter. It could be like a suing offense to have children going to school with an HVAC system that is so out of date. It's just, how many years is it going to be now? It's already 50 years old, right?
It should have been renovated in 2009.
Okay.
So it should have been renovated when the original building was 36 years old. Like I said, if they start this in 2026, that will be what, 17 years late?
Yeah.
And then if
right.
they started in 2033, it'll be 24 years late.
But it's a health hazard. And when you think about other schools in the system where they had mold in the classroom and it just became this sort of, emergency where, jobs were lost and,
right.
and legal action was taken. And here our kids are, and, it just seems not to matter to the county.
And it does have mold. And, when that happened in a middle school out west, a whole board of education got voted out and the superintendent lost her job.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
And
maybe that's our next step if we don't
yeah,
get it put back into 2026.
yeah. And I think I've shared some of those mold reports with you. I mean, the mold reports do attribute the issue to the ventilation system. Because it's basically, the system is at an age where if they want to open it up to allow the proper amount of fresh air to, eliminate non-mold airborne pathogens like the virus that causes COVID, among other things, the system can't keep up to keep the humidity down, and then mold starts growing. So then they have to close the system up to bring the humidity down, so that after they get rid of the mold, it won't grow back, but they're not bringing in the proper amount of fresh air. And by the way, the mold keeps coming back anyway.
Yeah, well,
Because I don't know what their remediation efforts are, but it's coming back in the same places. So they're not really getting rid of it.
well, actually, speaking as someone who was actually hospitalized with a respiratory infection because of mold in an old building I was working in, it's a pretty big issue. It's not just kind of, it's not the aesthetics. It's a health issue.
So to
Yeah.
Lynn's point, Jennifer, my new daughter-in-law, when she went to school there, she's in her 30s, they had a mold problem then. So this is not a new problem. This has existed in the same place in the art area for, I don't know, 15 years at least that I know of. So this is not a new
art
problem.
wing. Yeah. Art wing, science wing, media center. Those are the places I
Right.
know of. I'm trying to get confirmation right now, but from what I've heard from students who I don't think would make this up, last week when we had the heavy storms, it was also raining in the art hallway and the gym.
Oh my gosh.
Would it be too flippant to say, I'm just doing the numbers, would it be too flippant to say that our students are breathing the same mold their parents did?
Probably it wouldn't be exactly the same mold, but the same
Yeah.
mold conditions.
I think
The
Air
great
filtering through the same system, because they didn't take out, when they did the work in 2009, they didn't take out all the ductwork and all of that, did they?
no, that's exactly what they didn't do anything in 2009.
Right. So
When they did the work in 2005 to put the addition on, they didn't do any of what they
in the old
potentially
part.
could have done.
Yeah, right.
For example, think about what just happened to Hammond. They decided on Hammond. While they were doing that, they basically gutted the rest of the building. Actually, it happened here. It happened at Stevens Forest. If you remember, they put the addition on Stevens Forest, and then they used the addition while they gutted the rest of the building, so that in the end, you have what still looks like old Stevens Forest, but on the inside, it's new Stevens Forest. At Oakland Mills, they slapped the addition on. Period. They slapped the addition on. That's all they did.
Mm.
I have just want to show you something. I have worked with someone, so we actually have some infographics that are going out on social media. So this kind of encourages people to sign up and get out and testify, and list some of the issues that we're aware of just from talking to people inside the school, or just from reviewing assessments of the building, things like that. And there's a lot of additional detail behind those bullets, but we were trying to make it succinct and give people bullet points so that if someone is more interested in one issue than another, they can focus their testimony on that, because there's plenty to go around.
Jonathan, I'm not seeing the, what am I doing wrong? It's just a little bitty thing off in the corner.
Oh,
I'm not seeing.
is that better?
No, it must be something with the way my thing is set up.
I have it zoomed. It's taking up my whole screen now. So if I go any bigger, I won't be able to see anything.
Yeah.
I can see it.
I could see it, yeah.
Okay.
That's just me then.
I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you after the meeting.
Okay, great, thanks.
Bill?
Sorry, they just posted it in our Thunderhill group.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. That weird sound is back.
Sorry, I think it's my computer. It's dying. Abby, I think she's the PTA president at Thunderhill, just
Oh,
posted
yeah.
in our Thunderhill group. So I saw
Yeah.
it right before our meeting.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
Bill?
Jonathan, board, I think it might be time to explore possible legal action to see if there is anything that could be done legally, what all the pluses and minuses of that would be, because I feel that the superintendent and the school board have abandoned Oak Mills High School with this move. And I think the only thing that will catch their attention, maybe change their mind, is the threat of possible legal action.
I agree there's potential. I wouldn't say yet that the school board has abandoned. It's actually the school board that came through last year and overrode the superintendent, and they have the opportunity to do that again next week. And they have the opportunity to do that year after year and keep it on track until it gets done. And then once it gets done, they don't have to deal with it anymore. So, so even if we get a win next week, even if the board comes through again and puts it back, I wouldn't be surprised at all if next year we're having the same conversation, because the staff and the superintendent are going to keep coming back with their proposal unless they finally just get worn down and decide, all right, it's not worth it because the board's going to keep overriding me. Maybe 2 years in a row would send the message. I don't know.
And how about our representative on the board? I know she's not the best at speaking up and advocating. I feel like she is going to go toe to toe for us.
So I haven't spoken with her directly. I've been working most closely with the District 3 representative, which is also Oakland Mills. Apparently,
Is that Jolene?
Jolene
Yeah.
Mosley, because apparently Jolene is really focused on the capital plan, while Antonio Watts is more focused on the redistricting, because both these things are happening at the same time. Now, there's no proposed changes to Oakland Mills in the redistricting plan the superintendent put forth, but there are changes to other parts of D2, which is, I think, why Antonio Watts is sort of taking point on the redistricting while Jolene is taking point on the capital improvement plan. But I do know that Jolene and Antonia have been talking. I don't know. I don't know exactly what Antonio Watts is going to say at the Board of Education meeting, but I know that they've been having conversations with each other. I also know they've had conversations with other elected leaders from outside the school system, like the kind of people that would have to fund this eventually. So our county council people, as well as members of our state delegation. I exchanged messages with Dr. Jones last week on this, and I had a phone call from Christiana Rigby, the District 3 representative. So in addition to having members of the Board of Education already, working on this and focused on this in preparation for the meeting, we've also been talking to members of the county leadership and the state delegation, just in case this plan, as the superintendent has proposed, it goes through, and then it next gets handed off to those folks, because in some ways the Board of Education can pass whatever it wants. They can't do a thing until the county and state fund it. Now, I shouldn't dismiss that too much, because obviously if the Board of Education passes something and they don't ask, then the county and state can't give them what they're not asking for. But the county and state can certainly say, hey, what you're asking for doesn't align with our priorities for the county. What are you doing here? We're not very keen on funding this the way you presented it. You might want to go back to the drawing board on this. So that's why we're already talking to the basically the appropriators, the eventual appropriators.
Yeah, I mean, it seems obvious to us, but it just feels very political. So it makes me want to contact the other Board of Ed members and find out who are the ones that are going to be against this. Because if everything could get funded, then everybody would be for everything, but that's not how it works. So there's got to be Board of Ed members out there who would vote for the superintendent's plan. And so it would be good information to know that and know who is already on our side and who would, be voting against it ahead of time.
They're keeping it close to the vest. I mean, if we knew that for sure, we wouldn't have to go through all this effort, because we'd already know we won or lost.
Yeah, but we can know who's borderline and who, just the same in other political things.
Yeah, but from I mean from talking to the person I've been working with, like, you know, there are even a couple of people who I would think would stick with what they did last year, and she said, I don't know, you know, no one's no one's really saying.
Mhm.
So
So are we voting on going with this letter as the testimony? Is that something we need to do tonight?
I don't know that we really need to vote on it because it's not like our policy or a financial matter. I mean, as long as we're all good with it, we've usually just said,
Good.
okay, that's good.
Mhm. Okay, that's good.
All right. Just for your information, I've also been contacted by 4 of the feeder PTAs already. So I'm going to be at the Oakland Mills High School PTSA meeting tomorrow. I'm going to be at the Oakland Mills Middle PTSA meeting Monday. Talbot Springs doesn't meet until after the 22nd, so I'm sending them information and making myself available if they need anything. And Stevens Forest is looking into whether they can get me in before the 22nd, but otherwise I'll also just be, I've already started sending them information. So, you know, now that we're good with this testimony, I will provide that to all of them too and say, okay, this is what Oakland Mills Village is saying. And then I've already sent them, you know, those flyers and infographics and stuff like that. Because those things aren't Oakland Mills Village. That's just basically, you know, grassroots members of the community putting stuff together to try to get people out to testify.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. Where are we now? OMCA fiscal 24, I'm sorry, CA fiscal 24 OMCA budget requests is what we have next. And I guess this is, you know, an unfortunate night for Ginny not to be able to be with us, but let me bring up that document. And let me figure out how to share. Is everyone seeing that? All right. And Amy, I'm having trouble remembering. Did I've been so focused on the school thing. Did Sandy say when we have to have this finalized? I forget the timeline for the CA budget. Did she happen to leave that with you?
She didn't, but I could look it up.
Okay. All right. I mean, well, actually, we do have it under old business. All right. Well, let's go through it while you're looking for that. So, I think we've already I think discussed this in the past, but this is probably why it's under old business. The second floor restroom at the other barn, of course. The continued use of the cash reserves toward sustainability projects. In other words, anything, you know, anything over 20% that we turn back to CA, it doesn't just go into their kitty for whatever, it actually gets put towards something in the village that hopefully benefits the greater good of the environment. The tot lot repurposing and redesign, ensuring that we have competitive compensation for lifeguards so that we're not facing early pool closures again next summer. The usual, let's do something about the ice rink. The replacement of trees on CA open space, obviously. You know, the county tree is another issue and we're on record with the county, but CA is rapidly losing trees as well. And my observation among the trees that CA has taken down is that and this is unscientific, but my observation in CA open space around here is they're replacing them at best at maybe 1 to 4 at best. Maybe you're seeing other things in your parts of the neighborhood, but that's what I'm seeing behind here as I kind of note, you know, when it's on open space and when it comes down and when a new tree goes up. Of course, the CA portion of the Orchard Green Tot Lot path, so that we can get that crossing over to Red Branch Road. And then apparently, I know our EV charger behind the other barn is pretty popular. So I know we talked about this earlier in the year, getting more EV charging stations at the CA facilities in the village. So that would be, additional ones at the CA owned lots in the village center, as well as potentially at the neighborhood centers.
I suggested under replacement trees that we just specify we are losing a great number of trees in our open space. I mean, it's all over, but to just specify that that's
Yeah.
what we're calling them on.
Yeah, and actually I had to send one in today because there was a tree that snapped off at the top. I don't know whether it can be saved, but right across from Kilimanjaro Road along Stevens Forest Road, right above the Stevens Forest Tunnel.
Hmm.
Yeah, I put a link to their dates that they have there. I don't know if it's included in there or not. They're voting on priorities on September 22nd.
Yeah. Day.
September 22nd. Wow, that's a key date. So we do need to find out. Yeah, we do need to we do need to vote this tonight then. But we have these are all familiar. I forget when, but we have already gone through this. Now that I think about it.
That's why it's an old business, right?
Yes.
I vote that we approve submitting these as our priorities, or I move that we approve these as our priorities.
Okay, hang on one sec. Let me stop this share so I can see everyone. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to approve this as our list of priorities for the CA budget. Is there a second to Lynn's motion? I'll take Bill's raised hand as a second. Is there further discussion? Okay, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 0, 0. That was efficient. Okay, next up, and Bill, I'm going to turn the lead for this one over to you, is the HOA internal roadways. And let me know if and when you want me to bring up your document.
Okay, yeah, Jonathan, if you could bring it up when you can, please. And I know, Lynn, you had email comment about the draft letter. So would you want to discuss that as a start to this, please?
Sure. First of all, I sympathize with what Holly Court, what their HOA is facing with maintaining their driveway and repairing them. And I think that it's totally appropriate for us to send a letter supporting them in their efforts to resolve their problems, and also for them to ask for the county's assistance. What I don't think is appropriate is for us to write a letter asking that specific assistance be given to one individual HOA. And I also have a lot of issues with this letter in particular. If you read through it, it seems to me that the overall tone borders on hostile. So I don't like to take that sort of tone with my county representative and his assistant. And the second thing is that I think that it has some inaccuracies. And if you want me to go through those, I will really quickly. That the letter states that it's not a public county road, which it isn't. But I don't think it also is not an internal roadway. If you go and look at drive in, there are two entrances to Holly Court. And at each entrance, there's a sign, large sign, saying private parking only. And as you continue in, the parking spaces are stenciled with the reserved colon and the number of the parking spots. So it's clearly a private parking lot. And what's being called an internal roadway, I don't see it as an internal roadway. I see it as a link to link these individual parking spots. So that's kind of number one. So I see this as request to get funding to maintain this internal roadway, if you want to call it that, but asking the county to take over the maintenance while having the HOA still retain its private ownership. And so I don't see that as very different from people who live on a shared driveway where 6 houses operate off of the driveway. The county doesn't maintain those. That's one thing. I also don't like the attitude kind of the county created this problem and it's up for them to come up with a solution. Because first of all, the county didn't create the problem. The reason this exists the way it is that it was an agreement between the county and the developer to have a narrow private access road into the parking areas, and it was a trade-off. So the builder got increased density. The county didn't have to take care of it. The builder and the HOA took responsibility for maintaining the area, and in return for that, the increased density enabled the townhouses to be offered at a lower price point. And the agreement that every property owner signed was that they would take over this. That was an understanding that when they purchase their home, they have an obligation to contribute sufficient HOA fees to maintain the commonly owned properties, which are not public properties. So that's another problem I have. The other is calling it an equity issue. If HOAs all over Howard County all had county support and maintenance, then you could say it's an equity issue, but it's not. There are no other HOAs who have asked for this, and all HOAs make sign agreements that indicate that they understand they are making a similar agreement that they will maintain the properties. And then finally, I think it's kind of a neat trick to kind of call this a pilot project. But a pilot project, as I understand it, is something where you run it through, you get the kinks out of it, and then you take it to full scale. And since the county has told us for the past 3 or 4 years, I think that we've been talking about this issue, that they have no intention of doing this. Not only is it not something that they can do according to the regulations, but that they, even if the regulations weren't in place, I mean, for example, many here in Oakland Mills, many roads haven't been redone since the roads were put in the early 70s. They patch them, they do this and that. They don't go and do them full-scale replacement of a road or resurfacing of a road. And so anyway, I don't think that the term pilot project, I think that's a way of saying, we want you to give us money. And comparing it to the stormwater management stormwater flows throughout the county. It's not restricted to one particular area. So I think anything done in one area stormwater affects everything. I mean, actually everything else in the county, whereas resurfacing the access road in the HOA at Holly Court isn't going to impact anybody but the people who live in Holly Court. So I would think that before we do this, I mean, as I said, if Holly Court HOA wanted to send this letter to Opal and to Michael Harris, I'd say, fine, good luck to you. And we support you in this effort. You're entitled to ask for this and to make your argument for it. But I don't think that we as a board should be ourselves with our letterhead and signed by our chair making these arguments, because I don't think that they're substantiated, and I just don't agree with them. So that's my opinion here, but that's I'd like it if everybody went and drove into the two entrances to Holly Court and just see what it is that we're looking at.
So Lynn, I understand what you're saying, about, when it was originally constructed and, how this basically it took 2 to tango, right? It wasn't just the county saying this is the way it will be. It was probably a developer saying to the county, this is what I want to do. I'm not going to build it to your standards. It's going to be a private road. The only thing I wonder is,
well, I think saying just right there, not saying I'm not going to do it. I want it to. It's going to be a private road. Saying can it be a private road?
Right.
It's an agreement.
Right. Now, I mean, we have some other communities where it is a county road. Like if you go to up Kilimanjaro to Mary Rest, right? I believe that's a county road that takes you in. And actually that's only one entrance, right? It's the same cutout in the curb that takes you in and out, and it's just a loop. But I believe all the parking spaces are private. So I guess one of the questions, or if we're splitting hairs, would be, okay, if you know if we're going to say that we don't agree with this because it's an internal road that says private parking only. We have other county roads who apparently, the only purpose is to get people access to their private parking spaces off the road.
I don't know, because I don't know about the other road, but I know that there are a lot of properties and a lot of commercial properties, apartments, all sorts of properties, the pipe stem roads that we have all over Howard County, and the county is not maintaining those. So I don't know
Yeah,
about.
well, and no, but what I'm saying is I understand your concern that this road's purpose is to serve private parking. What I'm saying is we have other roads in the county, including right here in Oakland Mills, that are public roads that are only serving private parking.
But they're,
So
but they're public roads, so they're to
Right.
county standards. This is not
Right.
county standards. So it's not
Right.
not a public road. I mean, it's even, you even say it right there in the letter that it's not a.
Yeah.
And I mean, it takes something special because under regulations, the county does not take care of private roadways.
Mhm.
And this is a private roadway.
Right.
I was just there today. I have friends who live there. I rode my bike through the parking lot. It's rough. I mean, yeah, it's rough. Or like cars at this point.
I also, if we're going to talk about it as this thing that would eventually become a TIF-like funding process, what is Holly Court's HOA throwing into the pot to get this done? What have they budgeted over the last 50 years to do this? So that's a question, and my guess is clearly they haven't gone back at different points and said, hey, we don't have enough money in our pot to be able to maintain everything that we're supposed to be maintaining, but we don't want to raise our HOA. I mean, I've actually heard that from people who live in Holly Court.
To that point, Lynn, according to Alex, the bylaws in Holly Court allow the board to ask the members for a vote for a special assessment necessary to do a replacement of the roadway. And the special assessment would be much higher than the annual allowed increase in the HOA fee. And when the board several years ago put it to the owners, only 48% of the owners voted for the special assessment to do the replacement of the roadway. And the Holly Court bylaws, I think, said either 3/4 or 2/3 or 3/4 of the homeowners must approve it for it to be charged to all homeowners. So they weren't able to get the special assessment money to do the repairs that they needed to do. And they're bumping up the annual increase within the percent limits in their bylaw wasn't providing enough funding to be able to take care of the needs. They asked for a special assessment and it was not voted through by enough of the homeowners to get the work done.
Yeah, so I mean, that's another problem. So the homeowners don't vote for the special assessment. And so we're going to ask the county to take it over because they didn't want to do it. They didn't vote to do it. I mean, my aunt lives in a condo in Alexandria, and all of their balconies started failing structurally. And they did a special assessment. Everybody had to cough up quite a bit of money in order to repair all of the balconies. And they had to do it or tear down all the balconies. And that would have required money. I mean, that's something you get into when you are part of a condo development or an HOA. I mean, I don't know, I'm sympathetic, but I don't think that we as a board, if Holly Court wants to say it, to say, hey, we want this, we think we deserve it, and give all of these arguments, I think that's fine. And if we want to amend I mean, that's their right, I think, you know, good luck to them. If we want to send a letter saying we support Holly Court's efforts to find a solution to the problem they're having with their internal roadway, I would say that that's fine. But I don't think that we should be, first of all, slamming the county as creating inequity or telling them that it's their problem. I think that's not, it's their problem and they need to find a solution. I think that's just plain rude to start with. And because it's not true. And
So
Toward that point, the county zoning regs allowed for many decades the builder to either build the internal roadway system to county road standards and deed it over to the county, or build it to lesser standards and make it part of the HOA ownership. That the county regulations allow that to happen. So
they allow it to happen, but they didn't create that.
Well, they create the regulations that allow it to happen. They did not have a regulation in zoning that said all developers of all townhome HOAs must develop all the internal roadways to county standards and deed them over to the county. Okay, had they had that, we wouldn't be in this discussion.
But had they had that, you know, probably 25% of the people living in Holly Court wouldn't be living there because the density couldn't be that great. I mean, they didn't create the problem. They have a zoning regulation that allowed this to happen. They didn't come up with this as their own, ha ha, we'll screw several people, several HOAs throughout the county by doing this.
Well, the regulations are there. The regulations get voted on and are an intentional act, okay?
It allows.
And it creates an inequity in this regard, that all of the homeowners of all of the townhomes and all of the HOAs, just say in Oakland Mills, there are 7 of them, they all pay property taxes. And those property taxes are used by the county to plow county roads. So that Holly Court, where the internal roadway system is owned by HOA, by Holly Court, they pay property tax, but that property tax is not used to clean the snow from their internal roadway. It does go to plow the snow in the Tarleton HOA at the end of Kilimanjaro, where all of the internal roadways are county-owned roads.
Owned by the
So
county.
there's that inequity that everybody's paying taxes to the county, but the county is only using some of the money for some of the internal roadways and not all. So that's the inequity. It's created by county planning and
wait a
zoning
minute. All
regulations.
right, I'm just going to interrupt now since I'm presiding over the meeting and we're running out of time. So Lynn, I do agree. I think we can go back to the drawing board a little bit. I think there's things that could potentially be softened in this letter. However, I'm kind of putting on my old public policy economics hat here because that's what I did ages ago in grad school. And looking at it from that perspective, sometimes regardless of what parties created the situation that led to today's problem, it kind of becomes a common good issue. And that's where government often has to step in because, you know, no individual is going to be able to, you know, to raise the funds or to organize the people to fix this. So I choose not to look at the results of their assessment votes as, well, Holly Court just doesn't want a better road. You know, I'm actually looking at it as that, you know, there are enough people who feel they can't afford, you know, the increase in dues it would take to get that road. And if you look at it from that lens, they do get kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if they truly can no longer afford it, then you have a part of Oakland Mills that will continue to decline, which then further makes them less able to afford it because their property values will decline as you know, that area of Oakland Mills becomes less desirable, because if you're looking for a place to live and you're, you know, going over the pockmarked surface of the moon to get there, you're probably going to have second thoughts about what offer you're going to make on that property or whether you want to live there at all. So I do think we at least need to join them in supporting to try to break the cycle, because what I worry is that we can get parts of the community in sort of a downward spiral where they're never going to be able to come up with the funds to do this on their own, because the problem just keeps feeding on itself. That's what concerns me. It's almost like a a positive externality issue where no individual can see the value in it for them, but as a community they somehow need help in getting this done.
I agree with that. I'd say let's ask for what we're asking for. We're asking for the county to go against what the regulation is and make this an exception because we have a community in distress.
Mm-hmm.
And that, but to couch it with this, that it's the county's fault and they created it and it's inequity and all of that sort of stuff, I think it's an illogical argument. I say it is in distress. They can't afford to do it. Call it poor management, call it not being foresighted enough, call it whatever you want to call it. But the reality is, yes, it's pretty rough in there.
Yeah.
And it needs help, and we support them in looking for that help.
Now here's what I think we could say, and this where maybe there is a little bit of inequity. If you own a single family home and if you've been here long enough and you're in some sort of economic distress, right? The county does have programs to help you out so that you're not paying full cost. They don't seem to have that for groups of homes, do they?
Because for individual townhouses, they probably do. I just would lose the term inequity. I think that the different sort of hostile terms that we have, the pointing of fingers, is not going to help Holly Court's argument. I think it's going to turn people off. I don't think that it's a persuasive argument. I think it's an illogical argument myself, and I think others, especially people in the county who don't want to cough up that amount of money, are going to jump right on that. So I think that going with just what it is, this is a community in distress. And if you had a house, which we have had in Oakland Mills, houses where really they're almost falling down, the county has jumped in to give special loans, to have special programs, to have people come and help you fix your house. There's all sorts of stuff. We can go that route. But I think sort of blaming the county and calling it inequity is the wrong tactic.
Go ahead, Bill. And then I know we're over the time, but we'll give it a couple more minutes because I know that if Rebecca, Warren fell to the bottom of my screen. If Rebecca and Warren had anything to say, they haven't had a chance yet.
It's how I became aware of this was when I was on Alan Kittleman's transition team for the housing, and Leonard Vaughn, who at that time was director of Housing Commission and Housing Community Development, brought it up to our committee that many HOAs exist throughout the county. Some they're internal roadways or county roads. Some it's a mix of county road and private HOA owned road, and some are all private HOA owned. And he said it's a major problem throughout the whole county because a lot of the HOAs don't have the money to take care of the infrastructure, and that for the county, the property taxes are an issue, that if these roadways fall into disrepair, county taxes are going to be affected, plus CA lien fees are going to be affected. So he said this is a major issue throughout the county that needs to be dealt with. Okay, so that was his perspective, and I won't say anymore.
Warren?
Sorry, I lost my line there for a while. I missed part of the discussion, which is good. I mean, Lynn has some good points and Bill has some good points. And Jonathan, I really liked, I kind of like the analogy that this is a home that is struggling and needs our help, or needs the county's help, or needs some sort of help. And they are part of our community. They're our neighbor. They're not part of CA, but they are, I don't think they are. But they're in our neighborhood, and I think we should be good neighbors and somehow support them. I do think that I agree with Lynn that we shouldn't blame the county for this situation. It's just it is what it is. And I think we should, but I think we should somehow take care of our neighbors. And that's kind of where I am on this. And I'll be honest, I haven't, like Rebecca, she went and rode her bike there. I have not been down that road in a long time. So I'll try to do that sometime this week. So I'll know more about it. But
And be
That's
sure,
where I am.
They actually are CPRA assessed. So they actually do fall under Oakland Mills Village. We call them sub HOA. So they have their own HOA, but they actually have to comply, basically comply with our covenants.
Oh,
They can
okay.
go beyond what we do, but at the very minimum, they have to comply with what we have.
be sure you go into both entrances when you go, because one entrance, the road is actually in a lot worse condition than the other one. But go see both of them.
So since, obviously there are concerns, how about if Bill and I take this back and see if we can rework a bit, in a way that we are supporting them. We are still asking the county to help them, but, hopefully toning things to the point where we can accomplish what we want to accomplish. Rebecca, I think we've totally lost your sound now. For the record, everyone, Rebecca says, I can type and I'll buy a new computer soon. She'd also like to hear from Holly Court residents. I can't remember when we actually have heard from them. I'd have to look at minutes. We have heard from them in past meetings. I don't think, well, there are a couple of unidentified people. I don't know that there's anyone from Holly Court here with us tonight.
We've heard from them repeatedly, actually, and recently we've heard from them. Alex Commun is very vocal about his concerns about Holly Court.
Yeah, Alex, and I think Don and a couple of other people have come to speak out in the past.
Okay, well, I'm happy with that. If you and Bill want to work on it some more.
I like that
All
as
right,
well.
that sounds good.
Great idea.
And Bill and John, thank you for working on this. I know you've spent a lot of time on it.
Yeah, it's a challenging situation, and we can tell here, right? Everyone here who has spoken wants to help. It's just how we ask for it. It's that's I think that's the only debate we have right now. Okay, so that was it for old business. Board chair report. I know I sent this in an email, but I didn't get to share it, for the record, since I wasn't at the last meeting. Sandy and I did meet a representative from Klein, who is the new owner of most of the Village Center, most of the commercial. So just for the record, they own from the former Second Chance building through the laundromat, as well as the Duncan building. They bought that from Cedar. They are a local company. They are in Pikesville, Maryland, right on the Beltway Commerce Center, if you're familiar with that area. I grew up a mile from there, so I'm very familiar with that area. The gentleman we met with, Devin, he gave me a lot of hope, because before we could really start enumerating the various covenant violations that we had hit Cedar with, which by the way, they did not share, when the sale went through. He was identifying them. I mean, he walked us around and said, look at this rotting wood. We're going to take care of that. Look at this white paint. We're going to get that cleaned up. Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this landscaping. So, before we even need to start off, on a potential, bad foot with Klein by hitting them with a violation letter, he's already seeing with his eyes what needs to be done, and said, over time, you'd think they do, but just like with the private sale of a house where it's buyer beware.
Mhm.
Yeah, the covenant violations are kind of buyer beware.
Yeah, I went by today and the second chance hasn't looked that good since,
Yeah, they fixed the hole in the wall. They took down the rotten awnings. They took all the signs off. And
great.
he said in the coming weeks, before, while the weather is still good enough, we're going to see power washers out there. We might see painting. We're going to see carpenters replacing wood. So, he said they are in this for the long haul. The first thing they want to do is improve the appearance of the building. He wouldn't tell me who, but it sounds like they have a tenant for NYC Pizza. It is going to be another food place. It is not going to be another pizza place. It sounds like it's going to be some kind of Latin American themed restaurant, but he wouldn't give me
Okay.
specifics yet, because the lease hadn't been signed, but they were very close. He does not think that the Second Chance building is salvageable, but they are going to have it thoroughly inspected so they know what they have on their hands. And he assured us that he would not do what Cedar did and just come in with some half what plan, to knock it down and plant a rock garden. he's he's going to come in with some plan. He was actually aware of that drawing that we found online that showed, that Cedar didn't tell us about, that showed like the store, the new storefronts right up to the parking lot. And Sandy and I just took the liberty of telling him, yeah, we saw that too, and we didn't like that very much. We understand if the fountain will never work again, but we do like having a courtyard. We do like having a setback. We don't want the whole village center to look like any other strip mall. And he seemed to understand that as well. So we'll see what they come up with. He thinks, based on his experience, that the Second Chance building isn't salvageable, but we'll see what his inspectors say. And there was actually an inspector on the property as we were walking through. We took him on the multi-use path because we wanted to show him that, unlike most shopping centers, the back of the Oakland Mills Village Center is public facing because you have people living behind it. And you also have this very busy path. And he didn't realize what the significance of that path was. And he said, okay, yeah, we want to clean up the back too. We will talk to our tenants about taking their crates and other stuff in. And he seemed to get it. So that was promising to me. And I, Sandy and I both sent him an email thanking him. I also sent him an email about potentially connecting with someone who may be interested in whatever they do with the future Second Chance building, who doesn't want their identity revealed, but asked me to make the connection. So, maybe something will come of that sooner than we thought, depending on what they're able to do with that building. So that was a very positive walkthrough, and did make me feel a bit better about who owns it now. At least I know exactly where they are. I can just, when I'm on the way to visit my parents, I can just show up at their office if there's a problem. Lynn?
Yeah, I just wanted to say about the fountain in front of the Second Chance, that when the first week when school was starting, I saw families lined up so their kids could sit on the fountain area and have their photo taken for first day of school.
Yeah.
So it is kind of a landmark for many people in our community.
Yes. And I don't know how all of you feel. What I said to him was, it really isn't that important to me that the fountain work again. I think it looks perfectly fine as a floral display because of the granite blocks. And quite honestly, when you do have a working fountain, that's just sometimes brings in other problems because people use fountains for things they shouldn't use them for.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, the only other thing I had, and I'm sorry, it's another school thing, but I work the concession hut at the Oakland Mills football games, and while I was there, the boosters approached me, and they came up with a good idea, and they wanted to know if you know how the village board felt about this, and whether we would kind of help them connect with recreation and parks. And it's kind of related to the thing that I've been saying about Blandair and how they use the neighborhood, use the school fields and everything for the tournaments and the village. Okay, thanks, Rebecca. And the village should benefit from that more. And I know we've been after signage. They came up with an interesting idea and want to know if we would support that and also help them make the connection with the county. So apparently, well, we know these lacrosse tournaments the county brings in are big business, and they overflow onto the artificial turf field at Oakland Mills High, as well as the grass fields at both Oakland Mills High and Oakland Mills Middle, which means it's basically more wear and tear on the facilities, and we've already talked about the condition of the facilities. And then, of course, the Oakland Mills sports teams need to use them when school's in session. So what the boosters are interested in is talking to Recreation and Parks about adding some sort of surcharge, like $1 per ticket surcharge, almost like a community impact fee onto the tickets to these big tournaments. And then have that turned over either to the boosters or to the school's account, not the school system in general, but specific to Oakland Mills, so that, they can then help cover the wear and tear and the other maintenance of having all these non-school related tournament activities that are really recreation and parks, except Blandair can't contain all of them, being held at the school. And I know from personal experience, because my daughter is a lacrosse goalie, for example, if you go to the lacrosse goal on the artificial turf field at Oakland Mills, you will find a hole in the artificial turf, and it's, and so when you take, high school football games, high school soccer games, high school lacrosse games, and then you add on to that the overflow from Blandair Park, it's obviously aging a lot faster than if it were just used for the high school athletics. So it's not something I put on new business or anything, because it's no financial obligation from us. We can always bring it back and talk about it. But like I said, the boosters kind of approached me at the football game and said, "Hey, do you think you guys would be willing to maybe, help us advocate for this and help us make the right connections with the county people to talk about this further?" So I'm laying it out there tonight. There's no sense of urgency to do this, but I do know that the boosters can can certainly use help. Like I said, there's only one outdoor scoreboard that still works at that school, and it's the one in the football stadium. And outside of the major renovation, given the demographics of our school, none of the support groups have the kind of money to fix these sort of things without some help. Lynn?
Isn't there any kind of surcharge already? I mean, during the summer, those teams that were coming in from all over the country using the fields for their lacrosse practice, for that lacrosse tournament. I mean, that it was nonstop for days and days, and they don't pay any surcharge at all?
I don't know, but I'm not aware of anything that would go directly back to that school.
Hmm.
So, right, if there is a surcharge, it might be something that Recreation and Parks is collecting. It may be something that's going into a more general fund for the school system. And we know how the school system allocates their money. Just look at the plan we talked about at the beginning of the meeting. So what the boosters are talking about is something that would, specifically go back to the school. So $1, $1 a ticket. If they sell 500 tickets, that's $500 straight to the school, not into some general fund somewhere where it gets divided 500 different ways and no one really sees the benefit of it.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I think that's a great idea.
All right, does anyone object if I try to reach out and make some contacts? Okay, all right, sounds good. And that is everything I had. And we don't have Ginny with us, so I guess we're not going to have a Columbia Council representative report. So we'll go right to committee reports, and we'll start with architecture.
Yeah, I don't have anything really to report. We have our new member for the Residential Architecture Committee, and she's just lovely. She's great. And we have another person who has done 2 of the 3 meetings that they're supposed to go to in order for me to bring the name to you for a vote. And other than that, I mean, it's kind of simmering down a little bit with the applications, I think, now that fall is here, but we're getting some interesting applications with some kind of new things that we haven't dealt with before. And I'll probably be coming back to you with more about that at another point, because we're going to have to, I think, probably as a board, make some decisions, not just as a RAC committee. So, but with that, so stay tuned for more information about that.
Okay. All right, for education, I've covered plenty, but for the record, the Education Committee did have its rescheduled August meeting. It was before all this news about the superintendent's changes to the CIP came about. It doesn't meet again until after the 22nd, so I shared the draft of the testimony that we talked about, tonight with all of them before tonight's meeting, so that they have copies of it as well, and I'll update them with what the final testimony is. And then we'll go to public space.
Sorry, unmuting there. We did not meet since last time we have met. But the Oakland Mills Road protected bike lane is just about ready. I was at the BAG meeting, whatever that's called, and they said that it's nearly complete, but I think all the posts are up and the paint is down. So, and I've actually ridden on it once. It's very nice. We are, for the Oakland Mills Fall Festival, Bike Coco was having a bike corral as part of that. And we are having, thanks to Casey Bryant, we'll have a family fun ride, which he'll hand out maps and cue sheets. And we're also having the free bikes for kid. We'll have a place to drop off bikes. If you have an unwanted bike, you can drop it off and we'll give it to free bikes for kids. And the other thing is, I just realized that we're going away next week. So that means I will not be able to join you, Jonathan, for the Board of Ed meeting. And also, I don't believe we'll have our public space meeting as well.
Don't forget, you can send an email.
I think I will do that.
BOE@hcpss.org.
Yes, I will try to do that. Yes,
Okay.
thank you. And that's about it.
All right. Thanks, Warren. All right. Well, we are on to the bulletin board on time. Rebecca, are you still doing bedtime? I don't think Rebecca's here. All right, we'll go to Amy.
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
here.
I was going to
Nothing for
try
the
to call you
bulletin
so you
board.
can get back to the kids.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, they're reading quietly now. The only thing that I would have for the bulletin board is that Yards Alive has been taking kind of a summer hiatus, but we're meeting tomorrow and we're getting our plants ready for the plant share at the Fall Festival. That's really all we're, and the Bowl, who was one of our chosen cul-de-sac remodel streets, they had a really hard time getting started in the spring, but they finally have some dates to start planting. There's a date in September and October when they hope to get their cul-de-sac done. So that should hopefully close out that project.
Excellent. Thank you. Amy, anything?
Yeah.
All right, Warren.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention that Jim Riss, who was Oakland Mills High School coach and teacher, he actually coached both my sons, Paul and Brian, in lacrosse, and he was also a football coach. He passed away at the age of 57, and they had a very moving memorial for him last week at the high school field. And just wanted to mention that. He was a great guy.
Thanks, Warren. Lynn?
Nothing more.
Okay, Bill?
Real quick, Warren, with Bike Coco, I'm glad to see more and more bicyclists out using the roads. I have a concern that in personal experience, about 90% of the bicyclists don't obey the rules of the road. I anticipate always that they're going to run stop signs. But in the last 2 months, I've seen 6 people run red lights. I saw one run a red light today. The car in front of me was stopped for the red light. The bicyclist was ahead of me, came over on the driver's side of the car, stopped at the red light and went right through the red light. Okay. Is there a way with Bike Hoco to ask them to begin to effort to get bicyclists to obey the rules of the road? Because with more of them, my concern is running red lights, etc. Sooner or later, one's going to get hit and get hurt. And I don't want anybody hurt. But I've just seen more bicyclists, and I always give bicyclists wide berth. I wait behind, and even if it means we're doing 15 miles an hour and people behind me are blowing the horn, I'm not passing them. There's not enough room, etc. But my concern is that they're doing things they shouldn't be doing, and sooner or later somebody's going to get hurt. So just wanted to pass that on. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you. I've heard that before. I'm not really I don't know what the solution is. I can probably bring that up to the board next time I talk to them. But thank you.
All right, thanks, Bill. I'm just going to get on the soapbox one more time and say, you know, I will send you copies of the flyers, the infographics, everything. You know, if you have friends and neighbors in Oakland Mills who aren't, you know, really part of the school community anymore, print it off, send them an email, drop them a flyer. Emails are great, but really the more people we can get testifying live, the better. And, you know, this is probably one of the most important issues our community faces. Look, you know, none of us here, I mean, my kids won't, even if this happens on time, will not benefit from any of this. Maybe, well, yeah, Rebecca's, yours could. If yours goes to Oakland, if yours go to Oakland Mills High School and this happens on time, yours could. So you're the only one. But you know, there should just be general concern for what future students from Oakland Mills Village and beyond. It serves a lot more than Oakland Mills Village, are going to experience there. And then just, you know, from a community perspective, there are reasons why you never see the county GT orchestra concert held at Oakland Mills High School. You never see the adjudications held at Oakland Mills High School. You never really see any county-wide events held at Oakland Mills High School. This is not a building that the county wants to showcase, and in some cases, this is not a building that is functional enough to host those kinds of activities. So this is like the most centrally located building in the county. And, you know, I know from my experience, when we go out for adjudications and things like that, we go out to Marriott's Ridge, we go out to River Hill, we go to all these other places, rather than, you know, this school that is right smack in the center of the county, right off of 29 and easy to get to. And you know, there are reasons for that. It is not a facility that the school system wants a lot of people to see, and it's also not a facility that can really handle hosting those sorts of events because it's so outdated. So I'll step off the soapbox now and just remind you to, you know, tell friends and neighbors. It's not just parents of students and PTAs that need to speak up. It really is everyone. All right. And with that, I think we can call this adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Jonathan.